magnificent story ever. From creation to Jesus, the Line It Up series.
Hey guys, I'm Michael from eKid.
That's me.
And welcome to our
Line It Up
series. So check it out. We're going to learn these big topics.
creation, the fall, promises, slavery, Passover,
Law.
kingdom, temple, exile, and of course Jesus.
We'll even talk about the Psalms. Now with this, let me explain why I have this squiggly line. In the Old Testament, guys, there are some ups and there are some downs, and all these ups and downs actually lead to Jesus.
Wow.
Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, watch this. So God created the whole world, right? That's creation. Things were good. But then we messed up. So that's bad. Not good, right? But the thing is that God promised to help us. He gave us covenants, and like a covenant's like a deal, like, you know, shaking hands. It's like a deal. So God made deals with us to make things better. But guess what we did? We messed up. We didn't follow the deal, and we ended up in slavery. The Israelites ended up in slavery. Bad again. But what ends up happening is people turn their eyes to God. They begin following God again, and then He saves them, and they have the Passover about how God saves His people. They end up crossing the Red Sea and being free again. And when they cross that Red Sea and they're free, God gives them the law, a bunch of rules and things. But for now, know that they didn't exactly obey the law that well, and things got worse.
I fought the law and the law won. I fought the law and the law won.
Instead of really wanting God to be their king, well, they wanted to have people as their king. So they created a kingdom, which some of that's good and some of that's bad. But what's great is that they built a temple to worship God in. So that's a good thing. And after that, the worst thing happens is they end up in exile because they turn their eyes from God again. And exile means that they were kind of told to go away from their home and didn't rule their own home. So that was really bad. But later, in the New Testament, we find the answer to all this is Jesus. See this over here? We have God who's like good.
Yep.
Everything's fine. God's good. When we're close to God, things are good.
Yeah, but...
We're down here because when we're not close to God, bad. But what God does to help us to get closer to Him is salvation. Check this out. The Old Testament shows us salvation over and over and over and over and over.
Over and 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 over again.
Things are good. We mess up. We turn to God. Things are good again. We mess up. We turn to God. Things are good again. We mess up. We turn to God. Things are good again. We mess up. We turn to God. Things are good again.
Over and over and over.
Over and over and over and over and over and...
And that's called salvation. And the big thing I want you to learn through all this cool Old Testament stuff is that in your life, you might do bad things. But when you turn to God, that's called salvation.
Wow.
The first time you ever do it, you get saved. And there are other times in your life when you might do the wrong thing, and you can always ask God to forgive you and turn to Him, and He can save you from whatever mess that you're in. So you guys ready to hear the next story? All right, check it out.
What promises did God make in this story? Now let's find another story of God's promises.
He saw that the land of Jordan was well taken care of, so Lot chose to go the way that looked better to him. He took his family and they settled in the beautiful land near the town of Sodom. Abram took his family and they moved the other way. Then one day God said to Abram, "Look up, all the land you see will be blessed. I will give it to you and your family forever." Abram received the promise and the blessing because he was faithful.
Does God fulfill His promises to Abraham? What about Lot in this story?
So this is Abraham.
Hey.
Abraham had a nephew named Lot. He lived in the land of Jordan, which was near a city called Sodom. Unfortunately, the people who lived in Sodom did wicked things. God told Abraham that he was going to destroy the city of Sodom. Abraham pleaded with God for the people in Sodom. He asked God that if he could find at least 10 people that were not wicked, that God would promise not to destroy the city. God sent 2 angels to the city of Sodom. The angels searched for at least 10 people who were not sinning against God, but there were none. The angels told Lot that God was going to destroy the city. They told Lot to gather his family and leave the city. But Lot took a long time. He waited until it was almost too late. The angels grabbed their hands and pulled him and his family out of the city. They told Lot and his family to not turn back, but to keep going. Then God sent fire and it rained down on the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. The whole city was destroyed. Lot's wife disobeyed the angels and turned around. She immediately became a pillar of salt. Lot and his family were safe because they obeyed and left with the angels. God showed mercy and kept Abraham's family safe.
All right, so today's lesson was tough, wasn't it? We learned about some of the promises of God. What are some promises of God that you can think of that we just learned about? Well, how do promises relate to Jesus? I'll give you a hint that you might not know. In the Old Testament, God promises a lot of things, but he also promises us that Jesus would come someday.
One day, a prophet named Isaiah came to remind the Israelites of the coming of God's Savior. He said,
"For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness." The zeal of the Lord Almighty tells us this.
So God sent another prophet. His name was Micah. His message to the Israelites was,
"You, Bethlehem, are one of the smallest towns in Judah, but from you will come one who will rule Israel for me. He comes from very old times, from days long ago."
Nearly all of these prophets also spoke of a coming Savior, one who would take away their disobedience and sin.
So maybe that's how Jesus relates to the things that we learn. God promises us things, and Jesus was one of the things that he promises. Anyway, let's talk about that. Guys, I love you. I'll see you next time. For now, bye.
See ya.
The most magnificent story ever. From creation to Jesus, the Line It Up series.